Welcome, everyone. We're going to be getting started here pretty soon. If you have not had the opportunity to sign in, please go ahead and grab the QR code from the screen or navigate to hackucf.org/sign-in and check your attendance here. Also, if you missed the announcement earlier, if you don't want to type out these hashes by hand, you can find them listed on hackucf.org/challenges, where you can copy and paste with these.
Oh, it's still on editing permissions.
That is working. It's good.
Never wrong.
Being awful. Don't have a minute or so for that. Good. I'm good. All right, cool. All right, so the sign-in link will still be up on the next couple slides. We're just going to get started, guys. So I'd like to welcome y'all, meeting 3. We're going to have some really awesome content for you tonight. Obviously, once again, sign in if you haven't had the opportunity to. We need this for like voting, attendance, blah, blah, blah. Wait, sorry, hold on. I forgot. Wait, am I muted? No.
No, you're not.
Okay, never mind. We're good. All right, so today's topics. We're going to go over some announcements. We are going to give you the solution to last week's cyber challenge. We've got current events with Connor. Where are they now? Featuring Heather Lawrence. Tool time, we're doing Hashcat with Addison. Main event is covering how to CTF. We've been doing a lot of CTFs lately, and we've been pushing a lot for individuals to get like started and or get back into competition. So we're going to give a bunch of demonstrations on different kinds of skill sets and how to make best use of those. We're also going to talk briefly about Night Hack Shell Hacks event that's coming up, just so that we can let y'all know about that. And then we'll wrap up and go get food. So announcements. B-Sides Orlando, bite size. Jeffrey, you want to talk about this?
Sure thing. Thank you very much. So the sweet folks over at B-Sides Orlando are holding their bite-size miniature cybersecurity conference tomorrow. You can watch industry leaders such as Deviant Olem or Ian Coldwater try to attempt to solve several challenges created by some local cybersecurity professionals. And best part, it's completely free. You just have to go to the website linked on the slide and sign up. And the live hacking challenges are starting tomorrow. So we also are running as a club Sunshine CTF. It's not just any annual capture the flag competition. It's organized by Hack UCF members. It's running alongside B-Sides Orlando and is welcoming to all skill levels. So if you are completely new to CTFs or if you have a few years under your belt, we got something for you. Best part is if you win, we'll give you an awesome title belt. It starts tomorrow at 10, that's a.m., pardon the incorrect time, Eastern time. And the categories are going to be pwn, reverse engineering, web, crypto, and totally not emoji. And if you're interested in participating and don't know where to start, well, you're in the right place. We're going to be talking about that today.
All right, once again, talking about NCL. This is something that we have scholarship prepared for. I've added a couple names since the last time that we did a meeting, but once again, if you don't want to pay for this and you want to participate, come talk to me, show some interest in the club, come to operations meetings, or just come CTF with us. That's more than enough. It's a $35 entry fee, and it is really great training if you're just getting started. The gymnasium is open now, which will give everyone the opportunity to practice once you register. Preseason starts October 11th, runs to the 18th. the individual game. So one-on-one is October 22nd through the 24th. And the team game, if you enroll with the team, will roll in November the 5th through the 7th. We've done this before. It's a lot of fun. You get the opportunity to like do a CTF on behalf of UCF, competing as a university against every other university like in the States. And I think, no, it's just US, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so great time. Talking a bit about code breakers. Do you want to talk
Sure.
about this?
Yeah, so NSA Code Breakers is a competition hosted by the NSA himself. It goes from beginner to more advanced challenges. It encompasses log analysis, Wireshark, network analysis, or using Wireshark, reverse engineering, and cryptography, to list a few. It's free. You can sign up. It started on August, I think early August, like the first week of August, and it goes till December 31st. So you have plenty of time to join and get as much as you want done. Currently, we are in first place. However, things change and universities get more people to join and do competition. So please join and get as much done as you can so you can help out and maintain first place status. It is a great opportunity to see what you would do at the NSA. That's kind of like the day-to-day things they like to do. It also looks good on resumes if you want to apply to the Department of Defense. And also the NSA internships opened up 2 days ago on the 15th. If you're not interested in doing cybersecurity, they have computer science, engineering ones. They also have cybersecurity internships, which in my opinion, sound really cool. The link below right there in orange is the link to register. You have to use your Knight's email because you have to be a college student to join. Yep.
And to add just a little bit to that, you can score points for UCF even if you don't solve any challenges just by joining the Discord. So something as simple and easy as registering and clicking join will put points on the board for our university.
We have a flag in Discord.
Oh, is there a flag?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a small bot. You can do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's really easy. It's like a 1-pointer, but it's like 2 seconds time. So.
And beyond that, we're also going to be doing this in the Cyber Lab after the meeting tonight. So if you want to get a handle on code breakers and be able to like talk through these things, we can do collaboratively challenges 1 through 6 as a group. Everything after that, you have to do on your own. And Virtual Career Expo, Career Services Virtual Expo is going on Thursday, September 23rd and Wednesday, September 22nd. So if you are, what's technical mean?
It's like,
All majors are, if you're like in a major for you like humanities, while technical is more focused to like engineering and computer science.
Okay, so CCS majors, look for September 23rd and everyone else, including CCS.
Yep.
On the 22nd. Appearances by major companies. Usually this turns out to be a really great thing. A fantastic way to get yourself like started on getting callbacks for internships and or potentially like full jobs over the summer, depending on like what your schedule is. Handshake allows you to build essentially like a virtual resume that gets shopped out to everyone that shows up. You can select what information they do get and what they don't get and what categories you want to list yourself as, so you're not getting spammed as much. All right, so last week's Cyber Challenge, we put up a little bit of ciphertext on the screen and gave you all a chance to try and figure it out. We want to start these challenges off a little bit easy and then roll into some more difficult challenges as the semester goes on. So we're going to walk through this challenge real quick. If you didn't solve it, pay attention. If you did solve it, let's see if you were right. So Julius Caesar was famously known to use a ROT3 to pass messages between himself and his officers to control communications for Latin troops during war campaigns. What that means is by assigning values to letters and then adding 3 to each of them, you would roll through and essentially scramble all the text. If you've ever had like a decoder ring or played any of those like silly challenges as a kid, it functions on the same principle. Caesar ciphers and other rotation ciphers and substitution ciphers are like great ways to get started in crypto. So the way this works is you take the ciphertext at the top, you turn them all into numbers, 0 through 25, because we index from 0. You add 7 to them because that's what this challenge used. You end up with a whole bunch of other numbers. Now, some of those, they break above 26, and that's a problem. So what you have to do is you mod, and I kind of like you only subtract 26 if it's gone above 26. I made a mistake making this slide. And what that rolls out to is the correct solution at the bottom, where you've got welcome to PackUCF. These challenges are featured in plenty of CTFs. These are usually like the lower level crypto challenges. And if you take intro to cryptography, you will start the semester off by learning a lot more of this stuff. So the ciphertext decoded, and there we have it. All right, so now we're rolling on to current events with Connor. He's going to talk a little bit about what's been going on.
Current events, fun. A lot of stuff has happened recently. Y'all pay attention.
And the mic is on the desk.
Sounds good. So we're going to follow up on Project Raven because something interesting happened pretty recently. I don't know if any of y'all heard about it back in the day, but in 2014, Project Raven was a spy program for the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates is a country located in the Middle East area section, but they were essentially working with the United States to spy on its neighbors and enemies, which is not good. But originally, the original plan back in 2014 was that the company Cyberpoint was supplying the UAE with US trained contractors. So these people from the US would go over, work at Cyberpoint, and then they would send them to train for do the Project Raven, which involved hacking UAE's enemies. Later, it was moved to dark matter, which is based in the United Arab Emirates. So they tried to sever the ties between the United States and keep it more localized. They worked with the former US intelligence officers and eventually twisted it around to spy on Americans. And that's why it was in the news today. They used Karma, which is a remote iPhone exploit that was somewhat patched, not entirely patched. If Daniel wants to describe Karma in better detail than I could.
Yeah, so Project Raven was featured in Darknet Diaries episode, which caught my attention, and I really liked that episode. What Karma does essentially is several years ago, there was a remote code execution vulnerability in iMessage where you could send someone a message, they wouldn't be able to stop you from sending it. It would give them a link. Their iCloud would reach out to that link to try and parse it and preload it. And that would allow them to download and run essentially code on system for the iPhone, giving whoever sent the message the ability to execute command and control software on that phone. Read all your messages, look at everything in iCloud, as well as like use your device as if they were you. It was patched like 3 times and it's supposedly good now.
Don't worry, there's a similar exploit out now that was actually patched, hopefully, like a few days ago. So make sure your iOS is up to date, unless you really want to be on the vulnerable version for whatever reason.
Yeah, so how many people here actually do have iPhones? Well, maybe now you want to switch to an Android, but in more recent news, in more recent news, in 2021, so recently, 3 ex-members of the U.S. intelligence actually came out and admitted their involvement with Project Raven. They admitted selling info from like hacking tools, information, and stuff like that. And obviously, that's a big deal, especially because who it was. One of the members was the chief intelligence officer for ExpressVPN. How many people actually use a VPN service for? Cool. So VPNs connect private data, and obviously him being the chief financial officer of a VPN service does raise some questionabilities into, is this actually a good private VPN to use? ExpressVPN stated that they still trust him, but I don't know if I would. But the hackers involved, including him, were fined for a total of $1.6 million, showing you how much a cybercrime is worth. That's why you always want to make sure if you're doing actual penetration testing in a job, stay in your scope, make sure you have permission, because you don't want to be fined $1.6 million and stuff like that. But interestingly, they decided to pay conveniently one day after ExpressVPN was sold for $936 million to a new company called Cape Technologies. Find it interesting because they probably use some of that money. Okay. Corporate. Other than that, it's interesting that they still sold to Cape Technologies because they also have issues. The CEO for Cape has been involved with insider trading, stuff like that. So I don't know if you want to use ExpressVPN. You should probably find other sources if you do.
Well, you really?
Or do that, yeah. That brings us into another topic for today. Microsoft secretly installing Linux services on your Azure cloud. So if you all know what a cloud is, Microsoft has this Azure cloud software where you can build images, run stuff on the cloud to get more performance out of it. And one of the things that if you had a Linux machine, so instead of like creating a machine that ran the Windows operating system, you did a Linux version, Azure would install open source management infrastructure, or OMI. This essentially, what this does is it integrates, it's an open standard that helps with the cloud management and IT resources. So it seems sort of helpful, but they did this without really telling me, which is an issue because it runs as root. So this allows for a remote control exploit vulnerability, meaning that someone could remotely connect to this OIM and exploit it and log in on the Linux machine. This comes from the extra ports being open because the OMI installation requires extra ports, and that just means it gives extra ways for the hackers to access your system that you probably don't want to allow. Luckily, they did patch it, which is nice, but with patches, you do always have to be careful because sometimes it doesn't have to be. Other than that, that brings us to our next segment.
Awesome. Thank you, Connor. Appreciate it. Yes.
All right, go ahead and make those.
Only the host.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So our spotlight tonight on Where Are They Now is Heather Lawrence, former officer for the club. We're going to get her permissions to speak. Good. Okay, cool. Heather, if you would like to unmute and take it away, we should be able to hear you.
Hey, how is everyone? Hi, my name is Heather Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you.
You can't
I'm
hear
assuming
me.
it's something on this end. Yeah.
No.
I'm showing audio on your screen. Maybe that might go more. Don't choose that.
Okay, output maybe.
Those of us in Zoom can hear.
Hey, Heather, can you try again?
Yeah, sure. Anybody? Bueller? Bueller?
We'll use it my way.
Hey,
All right, awesome.
I can hear an echo. There you go. Okay, so everybody can hear now, hopefully. My name's Heather Lawrence. I graduated UCF with my bachelor's in computer engineering in 2015. I stayed on to do a master's in 2017. I started to do a PhD, but that's a whole other story. I was in the club for about a year before I started to be the secretary. Took a bunch of notes, worked with some really cool people, and was president. We got the, I think it was Lockheed sponsorships and Raytheon sponsorships while I was president. While I was there, I did threat intelligence with Fortress. I'm sure Fortress has talked to you guys before or will in the future because they're local. and ended up going up to Nebraska where I was, they don't really have a name for it yet, so they called it a cyber data scientist, but that fancy title is really just I apply machine learning to cybersecurity problems, particularly data. Was there for about 4 years, and because of the pandemic, they closed up the research institute I was working at, so I got picked up by Square. I am now on their computer security incident response team, so blue team. I work with a couple of the tools that you guys would work with. It's quite an interesting environment. It's like zero trust meets all of the clouds meets data centers and on-prem. So it's challenging. Other notables, I did go to the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. That was the 3rd year that we won. And then we tried to do it the 4th year, but it just slipped out of our hands at regionals. Let's see what else. Now I'm here in Colorado Springs. I go to the University of Colorado Springs. I'm doing a PhD in security where I am also trying to write my dissertation on different features that come out of network formats. So, right, you have net flows. Net flows used to be like a 5 tuple. And the idea is like it's a metadata about a PCAP, right, which is a raw network data. And because it's raw network data, it's, you know, pretty heavy to continue to hold on to, right? It's a lot more data and you have to create your own parser anyway to get any useful structured data out of it. So the idea is that you have net flows and these PCAP parsers, and they give you a bunch of features, and why are these features important? That's how we use network intrusion detection systems, right? We try to use machine learning to automatically detect anomalies for analysts to look at in the SOC instead of generating a whole bunch of false positives and burning the analyst out. In addition to that, I do a whole bunch of volunteering. I've been on the B-Sides Orlando board for several years. I've gone to DEF CON at least 5 years. I'm a goon, which is like one of those people that are dumb enough to volunteer for DEF CON. And KernelCon, which is a new conference out of Nebraska. They wanted to start their own stuff there, and I helped them do that. And then WESIS, I'm sure you all have a local WESIS chapter because I saw somebody from UCF there, go her. And they're more of the women in cybersecurity trying to fix that pipeline gap. Can I answer any questions? What kind of things do you do for self-learning? Cool.
Is there any questions in the chat?
Let's
Oh,
see,
there's one
things
from
for
Luke NASA
self-learning.
saying, what kinds of things do you do for self-learning?
Oh, okay. So when I was first doing college, I didn't know anything. Like I was an engineer. I was in the Navy before I even went to college. That's how I afforded to go to college. And I thought I was going to be doing a whole bunch of different things besides cybersecurity. Like my first year, I actually tried to rush at a sorority and realized that they didn't want me either. And I sat down in a Hack UCS meeting and I got to ask questions and feel like I was part of something, which was really cool. But during that time, I had to leverage other people to ask them how they knew things and to kind of form that relationship of, hey, I know this part. Can you fill in this little part for me? Usually when you approach somebody, and this is really particularly true in security, if you do your research first and you still have problems and you approach somebody out of the blue, maybe an expert, and you're like, hey, I did this research first. Can you fill in this gap here? most of InfoSec is going to be like, yeah, sure. If you don't do that research first, they're going to tell you RTFM. And RTFM is read the fucking manual or read the full manual if you want to be PC about it. What did I do later? We started doing CTFs. You have to prepare for CTFs, whether that's watching courses on MIT OpenCourseWare because the instructors at some of the instructors just really, security is not their main focus. Let's just put it that way. And there are gaps, right? So in order to certify anything, they have to go through different certifying bodies, which make sure that they teach certain topics, but not necessarily how they teach those topics. And that can cause gaps when you're doing like CTFs or going out to employers. Sometimes employers are really only care, they really only care about if you know their tooling or not, because that makes you look more appealing, that they don't have to bring you on board to teach you all of their stuff. And then later I started going to a lot of conferences, and you pick up a lot of stuff at conferences. And then I would say the half-life's about 2 to 3 years, and you start hearing all of the same stuff over again. So you either find niche conferences, like the very specific, let's say you're a reverse engineer, you'd go to a very specific niche reverse engineer con that specifies those kind of talks. Otherwise, if you go to general information security conferences, after a while, it's like the same content. I remember that happening with Hack UCF meetings too after a while. So after you've gone past CTFs and you've exhausted conferences, well, now it's time to, start kind of giving back. So it becomes more of a mentorship position where you need to learn from other people around you who are senior to you how to teach other people to bring them in. It's not just about how do I get to the top of my field, it's how do I get everyone around me to the top of their field, because eventually you're on a team, at least for blue team, right? Your team is only secure as the weakest link. If you have a team member that cannot, I don't know, recognize a buffer overflow, and they see a ticket with a buffer overflow, you have a gap in your knowledge, right? So at some point when you all begin your professional lives, being a mentor and mentoring others is a very essential part of this process, because there are going to be things that you don't know. And maybe that's technical, maybe that's technical writing, because that's also a huge part of InfoSec. Maybe that's communicating clearly. Maybe that's project management. There are a whole bunch of different aspects of being a full information security professional other than technical knowledge. And as you get more proficient technically, they're going to ask you to move to management. And if you're not prepared for management, or you don't want to do management, some people don't, that's fine too. Even as a principal engineer, you're still going to have to know how to speak, communicate technical ideas clearly, usually to a layman audience who doesn't care. That's just the way that is. So having those other auxiliary traits and working on those is super, super important. So yes, I'm still at the mentoring others and being mentored part of the self-learning process. Hopefully that answers your question.
Go ahead and repeat your question.
So Heather, someone in the audience asked, what certification should they be working for? And you have any pointers towards that?
Ooh, certifications is a big one. Well, all right, so I assume I'm speaking to a UCF audience. Generally, if you are at UCF, you are going to graduate with a 4-year degree. Unfortunately, the field for getting into information security is flooded. A lot of people want to change fields entirely and transition into InfoSec. So you are competing against these people, and you do have the benefit of a 4-year degree, but you would also look better with an internship and a certification under your belt. Now, Sec Plus was one of the easiest, and I got that in UCF. I didn't do very well. It's like low 600s, and I think you need a 600 plus to get in. And it's not about acing the test. It's about getting in as low as you can with as least amount of effort as you can, because I can tell you right now, a certification is only good to getting past the HR front door. Generally, your hiring manager is not going to care unless you're doing a government job, and then they need a Security Plus or some kind of government recognized certification. What other certifications are out there? What would be good for you? It kind of depends on what you want to do. There's a bunch of SAN certifications out there, but their pricing is astronomical now. So I would never recommend anybody in UCF, like as a student, try to go after those unless you have outside funding or your employer's paying for it. What are other good certs that you guys could do in college? There are a bunch of like little classes that you could take at conferences that you could say, hey, I took this class. There are Coursera and Udemy courses that have certificates that you can present. I believe there's also LinkedIn training, but I can't speak to how good it is. The idea is that when you're going up to your first InfoSec position and you're presenting your resume, you want more on that resume than just the classes you took, and please don't put your GPA on there. The idea is that you have a skill set that you can market to them, even as a fresh grad. Like if you can show them that you've done CTF, or you have an open source project, or you have some kind of like GitHub repository, these are all things that look very good in front of employers, and they set you out amidst all of this like huge transition into InfoSec right now. Let's see. What was the most challenging aspect of getting into cybersecurity? The most challenging. I honestly felt like I didn't know anything, and at one point I didn't feel like I could know anything. Some of the very brilliant individuals that were in Hack UCF at the same time I was, it was like I could never match up. Some of these kids had like, I was 7 years old and my engineer father brought home my first computer and taught me how to program in C when I was 10. Oh, and my mother, who's a doctor, blah, 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 blah. Like I didn't have those opportunities. I didn't switch into technology until I was nearly 24. And at that point, like my experience with information security was trying to install cracked Photoshop on a desktop, and then trying to figure out why I messed up my desktop and having to reimage things. Like that was it. So becoming like technically proficient enough to be confident in who you are and where you are, and even being confident saying you don't know, that was challenging at first. And there's a lot to know. Like it doesn't get any slower. Like if you are just in information security, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. Take a breath, first of all. It's always going to be changing, and you need to accept that now. I was like, yeah, at one point I'm going to be at the top of my field. I'm going to know all these things. And I can tell you as a PhD, there's a lot I don't know. And there's going to be a lot that you don't know. And that's okay. It's about having that self-awareness to know what you don't know, and then taking it upon yourself to go learn those things, especially if you want it for a job. If you want some position and you are not looking at different job postings about what skills they are looking for, and you're not making that, like filling that gap between what your academic courses can provide you and what your employer actually wants, you're going to have a hard time trying to land that first position. I lucked out in that I got an internship when Fortress was just starting and they needed people. I at least had some technical knowledge. I had just gotten my Security Plus and they brought me on to do threat intel. That's not how it normally happens. I just got lucky. Sec Plus, I got in college. I did the Security Plus program that they have there where they pay you some amount of money to take the test. Let's see. What can I do about internships when I'm a beginner? Do I have to wait until I have more schooling? Internships are hard. It depends on where you're trying to get an internship. If you're trying to get an information security internship, they're going to want to see some kind of cybersecurity background, that you kind of know what you're talking about, that they aren't going to have to handhold you the entire way. Do you have to wait until you have more schooling? Generally, it's the junior year that you start looking. And I didn't take any CS courses until college either. It was pretty rough trying to, I came from Valencia. I had an AA in engineering. And when I came to UCF, I changed into a bachelor's of computer engineering. Well, engineering, as you might imagine, and computer engineering are not quite the same thing. So all of my 2013 to 2015 was all core computer engineering classes. And it takes a lot of time and it's very frustrating, but I needed the schooling in order to have employers even pay attention to me, unless I have something else. So like if you, I don't know, if you have CTFs behind you, if you have like speaking engagements or talks behind you, maybe you have your own open source project that you're contributing to, or maybe you even have a huge portfolio of things that you've worked on. You need something to make yourself stand out. And really, if you're like a freshman trying to compete against a junior, you don't generally have that. You need to make that happen. Okay, let's see.
We really appreciate you coming by, and if you wanted to stick around and keep answering questions in the chat, that'd be great, but we have to roll through the rest of it. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you.
I'll answer stuff in the chat, and good luck with the rest of your meeting, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, thank you again, Heather. A little bit of an echo there. All right. So now we've got tool time. We're going to be featuring Hashcat.
I mean, there's one slide there. So Hashcat is for brute forcing passwords. If you have the hashes, it's not going to work if you have a login page in a website or whatever. You have to have the actual hashes in your text file on your computer. Hashcat currently supports 262 different hash types, which in no way comprises every hash type that exists. It's a very small subset. You can use rule lists. You can apply custom word lists, custom rules, all kinds of stuff. There's 8 different attack modes. We're only going to do 2 today, with the most common 2. And not every hash can be cracked because some passwords will be longer than you have enough time to crack in the remaining universe. So we have a small demo. Let's see. What do we put this in?
If I wanted to follow you along on my calculator, can I do that?
Absolutely. You'd have to get your own hashes, but you can always try to crack the 5 hashes from the introductory cyber challenge. You could use those.
Okay,
They won't be the same as mine, but you can absolutely use them.
okay.
All right, so here we are with Hashcat. This is my folder. If we look at what we have here, there's not much. We have some hashes, we have some rules. So this is the hashes that we happen to have. And these hashes have usernames associated with them. So you can see there's the hash and there's the user for the hash. So we pulled this from some database somewhere. And we got to figure out how we can break the hashes. So the word list RockU is more like an industry standard. There's about 14 million passwords in the list. They're very common passwords. So we can try to break that. So if we do Hashcat and then we specify our hashes. Now this is going to be in user mode since you have users. And we're going to specify RockU. And since I'm on a CPU, I have to force it to allow. And RockU.txt. And then we can go through all of this. And this won't take too long, even on a CPU. And we can see we've already found some passwords from RockU that have been cracked. And there we finished in a whole 8 seconds. We went through all 14 million passwords. Now, if we wanted to see what hashes and whose they were, we can always do Hashcat hashes user and then view. And then we can see we found all these passwords, but there's still 5 other passwords in our bank. So what else can we try? We could always apply a rule set to it. So if we go back here to our hashes, we can always use some rules. In this case, we're going to apply the leet speak rule, which is going to replace like a with at, I with exclamation point, and a few things like that. This is going to increase our key space up to about 232 million. This will take a bit longer, but this will take quite a bit. And also you can see here, removed 5 hashes found in the pot file. To save you time, Hashcat will not recrack the same hash because that doesn't make sense. So it will skip all the hashes that already exist.
So I noticed you're talking about the forcing to use GPU. Does that mean that you can also use you use GPU instead of CPU?
Yes, if you have a system with GPU, it'll be a lot faster. I don't have a GPU in my small laptop here, but if you have a dedicated GPU in your system, it will crack these hashes a lot faster. Now, so we found 3 passwords, and I have noticed no more that are cracked by this, so we're just going to quit. But you could theoretically let this run for another 12 seconds or whatever. But these are the only 3 that we were going to find from this system. So this is from the RockU word list, but I have a few changes to it. We still got 2 more hashes in our list. So let's see what else we can try. We could do attack mode of 3. This is going to be a straight brute force. So it's going to try A, then B, then C, then so on. And we can specify the hashes, user, and force. Yeah, and this is just going to go through everything. We've already found the 8 same passwords, and this is going to try multiple key spaces instead of just one. So the first thing it's going to do is try all the 1 length passwords, which this is the key space of lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and numbers. So it has 62 passwords first. So once everything is initialized here, a key space is just a list of passwords that we'll be trying. So if we go and stop. Right, so if we go up here, we can see the first thing that it tried was 62 passwords that we can see the candidates that it was trying were just 1 character. The key space is 62, so this is the limit of the password it was trying. And then it changed to a new key space of all the 2 character passwords. In this case, there was already 2,000 of them that were trying. And then we found our 3 character password here that we brute forced, which is ABA. And then the 3 character set was already up to 80,000 passwords. The 4 character key set here, we already had up to what is it, 2 million? Yeah, 2 million passwords. And then 5 character, this is 104 million passwords. And 6 is way too many passwords. So it grows exponentially larger and larger as you get, which is why the larger key space will not crack. So if we look at all the hashes that we found, it is, you can see we found 9 different hashes, and there was 1 hash that we were unable to find the password for because it was just too complex for our basic attacks. All right, that'll be it. Anyone have any questions? There's if you're on Linux, this just apt install Hashcat. It should be in Linux on pretty much every package manager. You can also download it from GitHub page if you're on Windows and run it there as well. All right. I think that's it. All right, good.
Thank you, guys.
Stuff. Oh yeah, we didn't switch. Fair enough.
All right, now we're doing CTF skills. How to CTF. I'm doing Pwn, so on Discord, my name is Oreo Meister. If you know me, if you talk to me in person, please call me Matt. That's my real name. So by raise of hands or on Zoom as well, who knows what Pwn is in terms of CTFs? Okay, okay, cool. So not many minutes, I'm gonna teach you guys something. So Pwn is basically the category in CTFs called binary exploitation. And so what is Pwn? You basically get a binary and you effectively hack it or root the binary to get like a shell, code execution, or whatever you want. So how do you do it, or how do? You reverse engineer it, look through the code, come through all those lines, tedious and dull, and read it, find vulnerabilities, determine the attack surface, so like stack overflows, heap corruption, ROP, which is return-oriented programming, etc. And then you basically craft the exploit, run it, and get either a shell, code execution, or a flag, which is usually the case. So, and now I'm going to demonstrate to you how to do it. It's going to be a simple buffer overflow, but is there any questions before I continue? Because I don't want to go, I sometimes go too fast. Yes. I will show you. I use.
Repeat the questions if they're going to-
Oh, sorry. So a person in the back said, what tools do I use? To summarize, I use Python, Ghidra, GDB with a GDB wrapper, Pwn tools. I don't remember if I said that, but basically that's it. That's all I really need. You can use Pwn tools is like effectively like a wrapper for like Python sockets in certain instances, but you don't have to use exactly what I do. So this is my virtual machine where I do all my CTFs on. So when we run the program, it's called password checker. Oh, and this binary is from CSAW 21, the qualifying rounds. We'll be going to finals in November.
Hey, Matt, can you increase your font size?
How do I do that?
Control plus a bunch.
Oh, let me get out of here then. Control.
Control 5 plus.
Oh, there we go. Okay, is that better readable for everyone? Cool, cool. So let me rerun this binary. So it's asking for a password to get in. Obviously, I don't know, so I'm gonna say no pass. And it says I'm dumb. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna launch Ghidra. And I aliased it in Linux, but basically Ghidra is a tool developed by the NSA to decompile programs. Look at them, it's for like static and dynamic analysis.
You definitely need to bring the font size up on that too.
Oh, boy. Not really, it shouldn't be too bad. It'll pop up. Is this readable for everyone?
Can everyone see the text that says no function on the top right corner?
There's no way.
No way.
It'll probably be if it exists in a window.
Try configure. Down, down, down. There you go. Yeah, that's not it.
It might be a window.
I've never improved font size before.
Yes.
That will just make it a lot smaller. Which won't help you guys.
Yeah, this is Hyper-V. You can't do much fancy things with that resolution without like editing grub.
So here, how about this? I'm gonna pull up main.
And now.
Can you guys, no, I have to be smaller here. Let's see if I can.
Edit. Tools, options.
Right, so hold on, this is a Java function, right? Maybe it's just as simple as it's right there. Yep, right above listing fields. There you go.
There we go. I'll make that like 20%.
Apply.
Is that better?
Why is this not changing? Deidre, why are you doing this to me? Let's see. Okay. I do not know. on. Yeah.
Hey, we gotta put in the chat.
Someone
I
on.
think I get it.
Okay.
Someone found the relevant GitHub issue.
I think I have that open on my computer. I gotta be honest.
All right. So
I have a
anyways,
different GitHub issue. What's that one?
we can just look at the assembly. Who wants to read assembly?
Yay.
All
That's
right.
the spirit.
All right. We just.
I feel like there's gonna be a file.
Make this a bit smaller. Is that readable, the assembly for you guys?
No, you're gonna need to pick that.
Okay. Unfortunate.
Go to like,
All right.
can anyone read the center and the back? Looks good?
Okay.
Yeah, we're rolling. Cool.
All right.
So if you squint really hard in the actual code, it calls this function called password checker, right? So it calls another function. So in Ghidra, it kind of like determines function names using some special algorithms. And so let's go to password checker. And so in here, it kind of shows you the stack and the relative locations to the top. So if we go through here, it says load effective address, LEA is load effective address. So it asks for it's going to print out enter password. Remember how I printed it out on the screen? That's going to print it out. And then this is so big. Okay, so remember how it asked me for input, right? Has anyone programmed in C before? Raise of hands. Oh, good, thank God. All right. So it called, do you know scanf, fscanf, all that fun stuff? You guys heard of it? Gets?
Yep.
Yeah, so you know how vulnerable that is? Well, we're gonna exploit that today. So it says right here, it calls gets, right? And that's where I input, right? And then it does a bunch of fancy math, and then there's string copy, which brings one buffer to another. And then it basically compares, it'll call string compare eventually down here, and that's where they check if I typed in the right password. But we don't really care about the password, right? Because it just, in the code, it's not hard to see. It says you got it or you don't got it, right? But if you look, there's a backdoor function, which effectively gives you a shell, right? And so in gets, the reason why it's so bad, it doesn't restrain how many bytes you can read into a buffer. So effectively, you can overflow that buffer, why it's called buffer overflow. So I'm going to launch up GDB, right? This is my fancy wrapper called GEF, if you guys want to install it. And we're going to disassemble password checker, right? And this is all that fancy assembly I struggled to show you guys. And so we're going to go up here, right? We have that printf I showed you, the gets, the string copy, string compare. So let's put a breakpoint after, we can do it wherever, after the gets is what the most important part is. So let's do it after the string, we'll breakpoint at here, string copy, right? So we'll do B star, which B means short for break. And then you just specify the function, because it's, if you see here, that plus is basically relative to the function address. And this is just the hex value, which I don't like to deal with. So I do password checker plus, and that's at 59, right? So when we run, the same output happens, right? Let's just put a bunch of A's. We don't really care what's going on. This is a bunch of information that we shouldn't really worry about too much. You see in the stack that this is what we just typed in. But GEF has this cool function that GDB does not have. It's called search pattern. And I'll just look for that string. And so it found in the stack, starting at this address, all my A's I just typed in. And so in this specific one, we want to call that backdoor function since it's never called. So we're going to grab that address, right? We're going to find the stack frame real quick. So the register RIP is basically pointing to where it wants to return next, right? And so this is where it's, that's where the location is right now. So we want to overwrite that. And so I'm going to pull up another terminal and calculate the distance. So I'm going to use Python, my family friend, and we're going to copy this stack. We're going to do hex, do that, do some quick math. And please stop me if I'm ever going too fast. So it's 48, I guess in hex, 48 bytes away. I don't know what that is. It's 72 bytes away. And so now that we have the amount of buffer we need to fill it with, and then we just need the address to append to, and that's how we overwrite. So let's grab this password address. It says right here that it's at address 00, and this is all in hex. So we're gonna grab this. We want to return to that, okay? So we'll get out of Python and we'll make, let's just change my directory, exploit.py. So I like writing in Python. So we're going to do from pwn import star. So this is basically importing all pwn tools. And you're basically going to use a function called process, which runs the binary that you want to run. Right, cool. So now we're going to run it. Now we want to put that buffer in. So we're going to make a payload, right? You have to use bytes. And so does everyone remember the distance in hex from the beginning of the buffer to the RIP register? Do you remember? 48. 48, good. So you can use hex multiplication in Python to do that. And we're going to use a fancy function called this, which basically, if you don't know how programs work, if when you're calling addresses or storing in values, it uses little endian. So you have to swap, reverse everything. So you do little endian. So it's least significant bit first to most significant bit, right? So it's kind of the reverse. So we're going to put in our value. Oh, wrong one. This is like when I copy and paste. Please copy. Yeah. 2, right? Cool. So it's basically gonna give me the little endian format of this address is what we want to return to. Right? I'm gonna do something. There's this. This basically like reads in all the standard output from the program and just goes until this is called. And so I'm going to do that. And then we're going to send this payload. Find my typing. And then in Pwn Tools, it has this thing called interactive, which will grant you that shell. It'll let you interact with the shell. Okay. So if we do Python exploit. Oh, I spelled wrong. Sorry. Did I spell another thing wrong? Okay. We're going to ignore this. Right? So ask me for a password and I press enter. Cool. I have my shell. So now I can do ls, all that fun things. I can do whatever. I have a shell. So if you were to go to CTF, you would have to connect to a remote server. And so after that, you can basically go throughout the server and do whatever you want. So that's a basic exploit.
Now, question, can you use Pwn Tools on like a remote server? Like if you have an SSH credential?
Yes, the command, the arguments are a bit more complicated, but you can effectively use you start a process and use the remote command, which is basically socket, in my opinion, in Python, if any of you worked with Python sockets before. But you could basically specify the remote destination, the port, and a bunch of other things if you'd like. You could also attach a GDB debugger to it as well. It has a lot of cool features, but that's out of scope for this right now. Is there any questions or anything? Yeah. Sorry?
It was an intro to Radari.
What's that?
It's another disassembly tool that like no one likes.
Sure.
He's asking you to do the same thing, but instead of using Nano, use Vim.
Oh, no. No, Vim. Anyway, so is there any questions in the chat, in the audience? I kind of went a little bit fast because I took up a lot of time doing the font size stuff, so.
So I kind of like a high level, right? If you were to like repeat this exact same thing, but in real life, what would you have just accomplished? For everyone that isn't familiar enough with assembly to have followed along the entire way.
So say a computer is running this program and it's open to the network, open to the internet, right? And I get this binary, reverse engineer it, craft my little payload and send it and get a shell. I could privesc, get root to the computer and basically own the box. This allows you to basically, you know, like how 0 days work? This is like part of what you do. If you, there's also, like if I wanted to like say a command, so there's a thing called shell coding, which I put on my slides. You basically get the hex values of the code you write in C. So like if you want to spawn a shell, you write that in C, compile it, get the binary or the assembly, get the hex values, and that'd be your shell code. So you can effectively spawn a shell, like a reverse shell, if you don't even want to spawn one. You can shut down the server. You could do anything that is feasible within C, the language that the binary is running in. So yeah, there's a lot you can do if you can get access or root a binary.
So this is how you take control of other people's computers and make them do whatever you want them to do.
Yeah, cool. Cool, yeah. Somewhat, it's a bit more advanced. Like I started learning this summer. If you know C, you're pretty much good. Python wouldn't help. It would help because that's how it's an easy way to do it. Pwn is a really good way to just do binary exploitation. So like if I can use so if I run this command pwn check sec on this binary, it tells me that PIE is disabled, which is position independent execution, which makes your life 10 times harder. No stack canary, so I can overfill the stack however far I want and they won't crash. NX means no execution bits, so that would entail you to do return-oriented programming, which is a more advanced topic. But some programming experience would be good to understand what's going on, understanding how the stack works. It's definitely feasible. It's not like at least this stuff right here isn't like you don't have to be like a PhD student to get, right? But understanding how at least like C programming works would be great help.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like if you don't know any of that right now, it's not a big deal. I know UCF does have in their CS curriculum to cover stuff like how the stack works. So kind of like watch out for that in a classroom near you.
And also to follow up with that as well, you don't necessarily have to have programming experience to start learning how to do reverse engineering, but you will need it if you want to do any kind of binary exploitation, because you're literally working with code as it like is processing. So yes, for this specific CTF, for this specific CTF skill, programming knowledge and experience is required, but like Matt was saying, you don't have to begin knowing everything. You can pick things up as you go along.
Yeah. Any other questions? Is there anything in Zoom?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Very good.
I hope you guys learned something. You can do a lot of the things like modifying variable values and other things. Cool. So search. Whoever's going next.
Thank you, Matt.
So my name is Ryan, and I'm going to talk about system administration type challenges here. Now, system administration kind of just deals with the configuration and maintenance, installation, and setup of systems in like an enterprise type environment. It's not something you normally see in the standard Jeopardy style CTF that we're all kind of used to, but it's very much applied in things like Hack the Box, Vuln Hub, or Try Hack Me, where you kind of just get a box and try to hack into it. A lot of tools that system administration deals with is kind of things like Active Directory, DNS, HTTP server setup. So if you're setting up things like Apache or Nginx, making sure they're secure. This is extremely important because these are tools that are used by enterprises everywhere. Active Directory is probably one of the most common tools. It stores a bunch of things like user information and computer information. It's a Microsoft tool. Like I said, it's used by pretty much any enterprise that uses Windows. UCF has it. Most companies you probably work for in the future will have it. It's very popular and very important because it integrates with something called group policy. And essentially, this is a way to easily manage computers and users configurations across your environment with like a single file. One of the main parts of Active Directory is Kerberos. This is a method of authentication that uses tickets instead of just a common username and password. Essentially, when the user logs into a computer, they're given a ticket. Whenever they go to access some kind of resource, log into another computer, they pass that ticket off to the computer resource they're trying to access, and it will verify that they can access whatever they're trying to look at. And if AD is actually set up incorrectly, you can steal Kerberos tickets like very easily and authenticate as that user. You can crack the hash that it gives you and get the password. So I'm actually going to demo that right now. What? Make fun of me, man. Okay, so right here I have my Kali box open, and I did an Nmap scan on a domain controller that I had set up. As you can see, there's a lot of things here. Any domain controller runs a lot of different services. The one that we're kind of looking at here is 88, which is the default port for Kerberos, as well as 389 and 636, which are the LDAP and LDAP-S ports, which essentially means this is a domain controller. We can see here that Nmap actually has found some interesting information that will help us, including the DNS name, which essentially means every computer that is in this domain is going to be appended with that company, the XYZ. Below, we have 80 demo.company.xyz. That's the name of the domain controller. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through and try to get users from the domain controller. So with this, what I'm using here is I'm using a in-packet script called get 80 users. I'm passing it the IP address of the domain controller and giving it the domain name. When I run this, it will reach out to the domain controller, and because it's set up in a certain way, I actually get to see all the users that are here. So these are all the users that are on the machine. You can see them. I'm also now going to run a different script from in-packet, which is get MP users. This is going to check to see if any Kerberos hashes exist that I can just take. And right here, I've got one for the user J Smith. Because a certain setting was set on their AD user, I can just take this and crack the hash. So I'm going to use John just because it's a bit easier and I can't get Hashcat to work in my VM. I'm going to pass it RockU because, like Addison said earlier, this is probably the most popular word list that exists because of all the passwords that are in it. So we'll wait for that to finish. Take a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
So if y'all are not familiar with RockU, it's a password list that was recovered from back in the days of MySpace, when you had to have a bunch of other like apps installed so that you could like not have to write your own web page. One of those very famously was RockU, and the database for all the password lists from MySpace at the time, because that's what you had to sign into RockU with, were stored in plain text and later were dumped onto the internet. And that essentially like broke a bunch of other databases. It's falling to less popularity now because there are a lot of places that check your password for its inclusion in RockU, and they'll just reject you making that your password.
All right, so as you can see, Hashcat was able, or not Hashcat, John was able to find the password from the hash. It was stored right there in RockU. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that password and I'm going to try to just log into the domain controller. And just like that, because someone's AD account was set up in their incorrect way, I'm now in the domain controller of this company. And if we get some information on the user. We can see right here that they're a domain admin. So I essentially own the entire domain here. So this is a very common thing in things like Hack the Box. And this example was kind of ripped directly from one of the retired boxes that's called Forest. This is something that can very easily be fixed as well through Active Directory and just making sure the user is set up correctly. So I'm going to pull up the user account. Under the user account, this one little checkbox right here is what allowed me to do it. So because it was checked off, I was able to just pull their hash directly from the domain controller.
So for everyone that doesn't have like 20 zero vision.
Oh yeah.
Maybe get like magnifying glass out.
That's not gonna happen.
No, okay.
I don't think so. Essentially, there's a setting on all AD users that says do not require Kerberos pre-authentication. If it's checked off, you can just take people's password or password hashes and take it right from one simple tool that you can download off of GitHub. Nowadays, it's default turned off, but if you're working in an environment where that has upgraded throughout the different versions of Windows Server, it's possible it might be checked off and you would have vulnerable users to this. So. Is there any questions on what I just said? I went fast. So in the case of Hack the Box, this would get you into a user account, which would get you the either user flag or the root flag, which would get you some points. I've never seen this kind of thing in like a Jeopardy style CTF, but essentially you would just get the flag that was stored there. Any questions in Zoom? Oh. Any other questions in person?
What does Active Directory do?
Active Directory is essentially just a container for users and computers in a Windows environment. It allows you to kind of organize them, and it gives you the ability to manage policies and configurations of those computers and users.
Wait, so is this like how when I log into any computer in UCF, that like the same username and password logs me into all of my same things?
Yeah, so this is what allows you to do that. And if anyone hasn't figured, if anyone haven't heard that all of UCF IT was pretty much just down yesterday. The service that they connect to their domain was down. So that service actually connects to this platform, and that's how they get username and password for like web courses and MyUCF. So one account everywhere. Yeah, so the way that Windows does authentication nowadays usually is through a technology called Kerberos. When you log in, you get a Kerberos ticket. And then when you go to access something, you give that ticket to the computer that has the resource you're trying to access, and it will determine whether or not you're allowed to have access to it. Some directories like this that have been kind of updated throughout the years or kind of just brought through have a certain option checked off that allows you to just take the Kerberos hash from a user by querying the domain. So what I just took the person's hash and then I cracked it and got his password and logged in.
So if you were doing this like in the wild, right? Like not in a CTO challenge, what would you have gotten access to? Like if this had been like a real company, right? And you had done this process, what would you be able to do?
So in a kind of real world environment, you're not normally going to find this particular thing. And if you do, it's probably going to be like a user with no access to most things. But if you do find a user and get access to something, you kind of just start looking through maybe what network shares they can read, what files on the computer they can read, what permissions they have overall on computers. You're definitely not going to find it on a DA like I have in this example, but you can definitely start getting more information about the internal environment from just one user account.
And if you did get domain admin credits,
You essentially just own the entire domain at that point.
you can turn
You
it off.
can turn it off. You can make another domain admin secretly and hope that nobody finds it and give yourself, persistency in a network. You can just start deleting policies. You can start changing policies so things start breaking. Like the second you get a DA account on Windows and a domain, like you can do anything. You can break anything.
What's a domain?
Domain is a collection of users and computers.
So you essentially own the entire company.
At that point, you own the entire company, all their users, all their computers, servers, yeah.
Everything else seems pretty important. Thank you, Ryan.
So this is my cool. So now we'll be going over web exploitation challenges. This is essentially like websites and how we can exploit or gather information from websites. So basic information about web exploiting to get us started. Has anyone used the File Explorer before? Which I'm sure most of y'all have. Great. So essentially a website is just like a file explorer in the sense of a website is a collection of files within directories and stuff. The www.website.com / that / is indicating the start of the directory. So if you have a folder and then you have your website.html, it's essentially how it works. It's just a collection of files posted on the web, which is what a website. And that's going to be important for when we exploit the website. So essentially, we're going to be taking advantage of websites to gain information. And this can be done via messing with the input. So in an earlier meeting, Jeffrey showed us how to take the comment section and use that to exploit a website. You can also do SQL injects. If there's a comment field or if there's a way for you to enter text into a website itself, that's going to be important because you can take advantage of that if it's been misconfigured incorrectly. Other ways, accessing files that shouldn't have access to. So like I said, how a website essentially works is that it's a file system. You can potentially access files that will give you more information about the website and potential ways that you can go about exploiting it. You can gather information for it and you can install backdoors. We're going to be doing a basic live example from Pico CTF, which is a great resource for beginners. I really enjoyed it. It's basically a basic level capture the flag that will help you start to get the basics down so you can work on and do some of the more advanced stuff. So here we go. So this is going to take us to a website. As you notice, this is our URL. We can just put a / here, which indicates that because we know it's a file directory. So files, website, what this is going to indicate. Looking at the website, we see that he's using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that's going to be important later because essentially we're just gathering information at this point. So one thing you can do, inspect element. And there's a lot of things that you can do with inspect element. Interestingly enough, you can change the web client.
So if I wanted to view a mobile version of this web page in a browser per se, or change it to use a different browser, like Chrome, even through them on Firefox, I can do that. All within this inspect element tool set. It's really cool. But for right now, as we can see, we got the first part here, which is in the comment section. Some stuff is going to be helpful. For example, at the top, does anyone know HTML out of curiosity? Oh, cool. So some web developers, but at the beginning of every HTML website, it's going to have title and then links to other files that are being hosted on the website that it's going to pull code for. So for example, this here CSS is essentially what makes the website look how it is, like what adds the color, the formatting, etc. If we were to remove the CSS, we would just get a text file essentially. So we can actually copy and head over to the CS.css file. And as you can see, here's all the code for that. And then boom, next part. Next, we can check out, because the website also mentioned that it's running JavaScript. For those that don't know, JavaScript is another add-on file essentially that allows you to do JavaScript code. So animation, more complex animations, login, essentially allows you to add dynamic changing scripting to your website to make it have more features and stuff. But that's going to be a file as well. And if we go back to our title,
Go back to the original file.
back to our head, we see that there's also a JavaScript link. And that's going to be really on any website. You could actually go whatever website you want to go. You can pull up the .css and .javascript functions of that if they do have JavaScript through. It is getting phased out as time goes on. Cool. So our next stint is how to keep Google from indexing the site. That's interesting. But before we go into that, just looking at the JavaScript itself, some websites write from personal experience from CTFs, they'll have their password logins in JavaScript. So accessing this file, you can see the JavaScript code for how to log in. And then you can sort of take the skills you learned from the pond categories that we talked about earlier and sort of reverse engineer how to get the password or what inputs or how the program accepts the password in a sense and use that to log in. But for now, we're going to keep moving on and figuring out how to index. Does anyone know how to keep Google from? Yes, or sure. Exactly. So another file that was mentioned is robots.txt. And normally, if your site's properly configured, you shouldn't be able to access this file because it essentially tells you which other links essentially or what other files are on the website. For example, it's not allowing Google to scan index.html. And what that essentially means is Google, the way Google works is that it takes, it has these bots essentially that scan a website and it'll scan the whole directory, all the files in it, all the files, all the pages within the pages, etc. It'll scan the whole website and everything in it, all the folders and stuff. But you can disallow certain pages and files to not be read by Google. And this is going to be good because that makes it not searchable by Google search engine. So someone can't just type this and search for it on the web. However, as you can see, having it here tells us that we can go to index.html and that just takes us back to the site, but you're gonna see other stuff as well. That's gonna be important site links to pages that the creator of the website didn't want you to go, and that's gonna be helpful and to continue exploiting the website. So if we go back to robots.txt, talked about how it's an Apache server. Does anyone know sort of like how you take the files of a website and then get them out to the web? Cool. I'll explain that for y'all. So essentially, there's sort of like three-ish parts or two. You have the operating system, which is where you store your files. You have the files itself, which are like this, the individual pages. And then you have a application, like in this instance, it's Apache. And what Apache does is that it takes the files and essentially allows it to be hosted onto the World Wide Web so anyone can remotely access the files. And that's all it really does. It just serves up the files so that you can go to your browser and access them. But because certain applications like Apache, and there's other web applications too that are vulnerable to different things like Tomcat. But Apache has a certain structure and certain files that we know, and we can exploit that further. For example, HTX access is another file, default file in Apache. You can find a lot of other things. For example, if we knew that this run PHP, that would be helpful because we can gather information about the PHP and eventually try to find database and PHP myadmin, which stores database credentials, which sort of keeps the knowledge about the website. So like if you log in, it saves your credentials to that database on the website, and PHP could exploit that. But that would be another thing that we could use this URL track. Last part, it seems Mac, and it's where Mac stores its information for the website. How many here actually do use the Mac? Cool. But different operating systems are configured differently. Some stuff, like if we go back to the inspector element, we can see storage. And this is where we can see cookies and stuff. This can be helpful because you can actually change and edit your cookies. And what a cookie does is essentially save that information to be used if you revisit the site. And you can sort of exploit that to gain access as well. Just some helpful tidbits. And sometimes websites will store things on your client machine, like the machine I'm using here. And we can view that in local storage. And that's another thing that we can look at, gain more information to help us get into the system. But the way Macs work is that they store it into another file called ds_store. And that's the last file. And that's where Macs, for specifically Macs, is where they're going to store like icons, stuff like that on a website. But yeah, that's really just the basics of web exploitation. You can do a lot of fancy stuff with this same URL trick that I won't get into now, but you can, some websites, if it's poorly configured, you can actually send in commands to go back essentially. So you can escape the website files and get access to the system files as well. And those are just some other things that you can do with this knowledge. But I'll hand it off over to y'all for the next section.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Oh, that's louder than I thought. So anyways, let's talk about steganography. So steganography is a word that essentially is the art of hiding files within files. So if we want to find something secret inside of another file, say just to transmit files securely, or just because it's the only way we transmit data. For instance, if you have an image and want to like hide some like text metadata, say locations, you can do that kind of under the framework of steganography. there are many tools that exist to like help solve steganography challenges. Some of these can be steg hide, steg solve, exif tool, digital invisible ink toolkit, and OpenStego, to name a few. And like kind of my first advice is that a lot of these tools can be super helpful and might even be essential to solve them challenges, but there are a lot of like lower level like stego challenges that tend to be a bit guessy. So we're gonna actually hack USF. So the friends over at the White Hatters Computer Security Club have their own 24/7 CTF, and we're gonna be taking a look at some of their challenges and seeing like what we can find. So first off, we're gonna start off with a colorful image. It's just black. Or is it? So I'm actually going to open up a program called Steg Solve, and then we can go to File, and then Open. But I already opened the file right here. And then we can kind of browse. Oh, it is not being. Thank you for that. Now we are. So there we go. So we got Steg Solve open, and we can, as I said, File, Open, but the file's already open. So we can actually kind of browse through the different planes or layers of an image. So color is stored on computers in RGB, red, blue, and green. But it also has an alpha layer on many file formats such as JPEG and JPEG 2000 and PNG. Older file formats as well as like GIF will also store individual colors in like a bitmap. So we're going to actually take a look at some of the options Steg Solve has. One of them is just an XOR operation. So that's taking all the ones in code and turning them to zeros. Here, it would create the inverse of a color if you've seen like some of those weird X-ray effects on like video and photo editing apps. And then we can look at some of the different planes. So here we got a bunch of blank alpha pages. There's no transparency in this image. Same deal with red and green and blue, because there's no color as far as we can tell. But once we get to past full alpha, and we get to the random color maps, which takes the like bitmaps that currently are all set to black and just puts random colors in places. And that makes our black, not colorful image actually look colorful. So we can actually see a cat, and it says that this rainbow is as black as my heart. Poor kitty. So there would be our first flag down the screen. So kind of continuing on to something that is less tool intensive, we have the pretty challenge. And it's just a bunch of colors. But is there a way to store data within colors? And does anyone actually know how? Okay, that's fine. But it turns out colors are represented by hex values. So like, if you know the UCF color is FFC904, give it that hex value and it will render UCF gold. Similarly, all of these are different colors as shown on the screen. And if we take these colors and then concatenate them into a single string, we can actually get data out of this. So I'm gonna do this with a hex editor. So I'm gonna copy that and open HXD, which is a hex editor for Windows. I'm gonna make a new file and then just paste in the binary data. And there we go. We got our flag. And it seems like I'm not gonna be able to zoom in without magnifier. Of course not. So we're able to get our flag that way. And just a bit of trivia. So if you've ever seen the free speech flag, back in the day, like for Blu-ray DRM, they actually used a similar pattern to distribute private keys of Blu-ray DRM, and it was stored in colors. And finally, we have Ahoy, which is very flagtastic, if I have to say so myself. So we're given this image and we are told that this means something. So kind of looking at it, I first see that we have 4 characters here and then this kind of like curly bracket thing, and then a bunch of other flags, and then a closed curly bracket. This like could be the text like WCSC, and then a bracket, and then a bracket, and then something in between, which would be our flag format. So I wonder if there's a way we can like turn these flags into text, and just happens to be possible. So there is an international alphabet flags code, and you can use this code to slowly decode it. So first, we have that F, which is the diamond, and then that checkerboard, which is the L, and then we got an A, and then a G, and then so on and so forth. And then from here, we can actually continue to solve the rest of this challenge. But I do want to pose something. Give this a shot yourself. This challenge is available on wargames.wcsc.usf.edu, sorry. And you can try all 3 of these challenges and many more on your own. In addition, just to kind of plug it as well, Hack UCF also has its own 24/7 CTF at ctf.hackucf.org. Both are really fun and are worth a look, whether it's steganography you're into or something else.
Looks like we got someone from.
Yeah, that was someone from USF. So hello. So yeah, from here, there is a question. As someone who is new to this, how would you even know that there's a flag alphabet? Honest answer, I Googled it. I Googled is like flag alphabet to see if anything popped up. And like Googling is a skill. Like Googling is very important, and just kind of knowing what words to put in the search engine to get more info, super helpful. So.
Sorry, to follow up with that, in one of the CTFs that I did that was very similar to this, Stagger Challenge popped up with an image, and the first one was in Sumerian. And I don't read Sumerian, but Google does. And they let me do a Wikipedia that just basically gave me a 1-for-1 translation. Another challenge in that same CTF gave me the alien language from Futurama, which is practically like unreadable. Like you can't, like, unless you saw that one episode of Futurama, you wouldn't know it. So oftentimes you have to use like reverse image search, or you have to just kind of like poke around at like fun made up languages just to figure out if someone else has like talked about it at one time or another. And that's how I ended up getting the answer to those challenges.
Also, I forgot to mention for the binary exploitation, I will be hosting workshops throughout the year. I'll have to teach you guys how to do it if they're interested in learning.
Yeah, now someone on the Discord also asked to explain the color bars one again. So that would be this one. So the principle behind this is that each color can be represented as a tuple of hexadecimal values. So like, for instance, that first color, 776373. Those 3 characters, 7763 and 73, tell how bright the red, green, and blue pixels need to be in our computer. But instead of using this information to kind of change the lighting, we're using this information to like converting that individual hex byte into like ASCII essentially. And then from that, we can get our flag. Any other questions in the audience? Oh, they said the bars one. Also explain the black one. Sorry if I went a bit too fast. So this relies on a trick in just how images are stored. This specifically is a JPEG. And sometimes file formats like bitmap based like JPEG and GIF, it will store all the possible colors it can render as its own kind of map. This is also how a lot of like older game systems also render color. So the idea here is that all of the colors, if I open up StegSolve again, just gonna. There we go. So the idea is that we have pretty much a palette of colors, and all of them are set to black. So this tool, StegSolve, will allow us to randomly populate those kind of pre-built in like blocks of black and change them to random colors. And because we did this, we're able to actually decipher this message by this painting of random colors. Did that make sense or no? Also, any other questions in the audience? All righty.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
And yes, Christopher actually probably is the one who made the challenge.
Oh, I did see something.
Yeah, yeah, he's in chat. Okay. Let's just kind of skip ahead.
Thanks again to Jeffrey. Talking about operations real quick. All the content that we make is dependent upon the number of people we have available to make up challenges. So if you want to come out and help organize, run the club, learn something, teach something, you want to go over something important to you, or just maybe talk about current events, we'd love to give you the opportunity to do so. You can join us on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. It's any member. Just go ahead and talk to one of us or show up to the meetings. More than welcome to. I once again want to give a shout out to our projects going on currently at HackUCF. Infra Dev, do you have anything that you want to add? Still looking for JavaScript devs. Anything else for infra?
Yeah.
The infra works, and today was proof. Even if there might be some security vulnerabilities at the moment.
You don't want like fun JavaScript stuff, but also system administration, general security stuff. That you can help out with.
All right, awesome. Web dev crew, you guys looking for anybody right now?
Yeah, we can always use more help if we need it. That way we can teach more people if you're interested in web development, like with Squarespace. And then we can maybe even help you expand other tools as well. It's fun.
Yeah, it doesn't require a lot of coding, like kind of web dev, not really.
So Luke Mansa asked in the chat, what exactly is infrastructure development project? You couldn't hear what was being said by the members of the audience. So yeah, if you want to come up here real quick and talk about it.
In short, we made our cloud.
And here we got Ryan to talk about the infrastructure development project.
So has anyone here used a cloud service provider like cloud provider like AWS or Azure, or at least heard of them? Yeah. So essentially what we did was we took Azure on a very, very small scale and built it from scratch with servers that Lockheed Martin has graciously donated to us to use so that members of HackUCF can essentially just like make VMs whenever they want, wherever they want on our cluster. So since we built it from scratch, we are always looking for people who want to learn JavaScript, specifically Knox.js, Express.js, people who want to learn system administration, like something I talked about earlier. We also could use that help. Anyone who wants to learn more about like virtualization in general or cloud computing in general, it's a great thing to put on your resume saying, hey, I did this. I think that answers the question pretty well.
What would you do with the infra? Like what's it capable of?
So the infra, if you just want to do like hack the box or something, you can just say, I want a Kali box and log into the infra and make a Kali box and then start using it for hack the box. In the future, we'll start using it for workshops. So you don't even have to prepare for workshops. You can just come and someone will provide you with the infrastructure and you can just do anything on there that is workshop related.
No need to like use a VM on your own local machine or fiddle around with BIOS settings on virtualization. You'll be able to just show up and have all the tools ready to go, prepared by the person who made the workshop. So it really helps to kind of reduce friction while trying to get you guys to learn.
Also makes it easier for someone who wants to host a workshop because you can make an image once and then just make multiple versions of it for people to use instead of having to go through and write out documentation on how to install the software on your computer.
So it's kind of like having a bunch of free computers that I can use whenever I want, however I want, right?
As long as you're not using them illegally or hacking anything you're not supposed to, yes.
Yeah, don't break the law and you're fine.
Something ethics forms.
Right. And also, if I wanted to like attack the boxes on the infra for my own computer, that's cool too, right?
So, yeah, so there is a network on the infrastructure that is dedicated to you. If you just want to put a box out there and have people try and hack it, it's all fair game. You can hack other people's if they're on the same network. Just since it's called the Wild Wild Net. So, yeah. Place you can do pretty much anything.
Now, someone is interested in learning more. How do I have to get involved? Do I just go to ops meetings, or is there a different way I can get involved with infra?
So there is a dedicated infra meeting before the ops meetings on Tuesdays at 7 in the Cyber Lab. You can also add me, my name is Ryan in Discord, Jeffrey and Michael as well. We're all working on infra. So you can reach out to us, show up to that meeting. You can ask questions in the general public. For some reason, Discord doesn't want to let you add people.
You can also just add infra dev and that'll hit all of them.
Yeah, got it, my friend.
Yeah, you can just do the at everyone for us. I'm fine with that.
We're working on getting a public channel specifically made for this in the Hack UCF Discord, so it's not as complicated in the future. It's just a fun place.
Yeah, so look out for that.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Anyone have any questions about the web dev crew? If you want to join or you want to like get interested, who do you talk to? Everyone clear on that one? Cool. Same thing in Zoom.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Cool. And last but not least, design crew. I currently head up with like maybe one or two other people, all of the designs. So logos, like t-shirt designs, like hat designs, all the merch stuff, everything that goes up on the website as far as like colors and images and things like that. Like the Discord, Discord logos, the like QR codes, all that stuff. We do that internally. So we do all that development. We will eventually be doing a t-shirt and a hoodie design contest. So if you have any graphical design experience and you want to get involved with that, please come talk to me. If you know someone who's interested in doing that kind of thing, please have them come talk to me because I want to get the best stuff we possibly can. Anyone have any questions for that?
No, but just a kind of a comment. The Hack USF logo was, I guess, honorably made by the graphic design team.
Oh, okay.
And by that, I mean,
Yeah. Cool. Last little bit before we wrap up. Our friends over at Night Hacks wanted us to push this out here because it's coming up next week. And maybe you're not like just into security, maybe you're interested in software development, you want to like do kind of fun things like that, or maybe you want to do both. Shell Hacks is going on next Friday. It's going on in the Cyber Lab. They are meeting beforehand while our meeting is ongoing, so you will have to choose to do one or the other. But they're going to be watching the opening ceremony there on the Jumbotron, and hopefully next week we'll be able to wrap up in time to go join them over there, and everyone can kind of like get teams built and together so that they can do the 48-hour code jam session. That's going to be coming up, like I said, the 24th through the 26th. You need to apply before Wednesday because they are doing an unofficial soft close on registrations. So if you want to put a team together, you need to get registered before Wednesday. You can apply at https://shellhacks.net. Or you can just add anyone in the Night Hacks Discord and ask them about it, and someone will help you out. So in addition, this QR code for them, that's the location that it's going to be at, and that's the time. Should be a lot of fun. This one, Shell Hacks very specifically is a security-oriented hackathon. So you'll be building security tooling, or you will be working with some teams that have something to do with like code based around security concepts. So it should be a great time. If you are interested, you should definitely check it out. Cool. Remember, stay informed. If you're not on the mailing list, you should join. We finally got that authenticated, so it won't go directly to your spam anymore. If you're looking for stuff to wear, you can hit our shop. If you want to join our Discord, you haven't already. QR code's right there, and you can check us out on Twitter too. All right. Thank you all very much. We appreciate you coming. If you have any questions, feel free to come up here and talk. We're gonna wrap up here and you go to the Cyber Lab afterward.
Almost instantly. Someone had it.